Hello and welcome! So, today we're taking a look at a BloodCraft deck for rotation. Blood has got some new life in a more mid-range style with all the new cards. I wanted to give this a solid go since it actually is right up my alley for playstyle at the moment, as I do quite enjoy this style of mid-range in particular. I'm not usually very partial to mid-range decks overall, but I mean, I'm kind of 50-50 on them for the most part, so definitely an interesting one. Plus, getting to use Armored Bat, the adorable little guy, is always a fun time. So of course we are including a lot of the new cards. Warring Thunder is actually quite handy and things like that to really take advantage of Destructive Succubus, which has quite a large sweep for damage, which is great, and being able to manipulate Medusa to do some amazing things with serpents is always awesome. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. So the first match for this video is Blood versus Blood. So our starting hand is pretty mediocre. I don't mind this too much because Mechawing Angel as a 2-drop is actually a possible line of play, and Warring Thunder is actually okay on its own. So it's definitely not bad, especially when I can possibly go for the Mechawing Angel into the Armored Bat play. Although Robo Goblin definitely limits my options. So Warring Thunder is going to be the option that I do decide to take to directly counter this. And of course, Kiss of Lust. Not what you want to go up against. So Armored Bat. Vera is in this deck as just purely a protection option, if in case you do risk getting too low. And I'm running the cores because I really wanted to give those a solid go. So Vera with an Evo is definitely the right play to make since we can freely trade now. Killing off the Goblin. And going face for just that little 1 damage to balance ourselves out. We're also looking at a Medusa on 5, which should be reasonably good. Especially considering they can't kill a Vera here with this. So hopefully our Medusa will counter theirs. And then really it's just a matter of who can play better from here and get the luckier draws. Since we are playing obviously very similar decks. For the most part, they're both mid-range style blood decks. So I did leave up the Bane. Not that it's a huge deal, it's just a little inconvenient. Since at least this way I can 2 for 1 with some of these big drops minimum. And it looks like they're going to go for a very, very interesting line of play. Not sacrificing any of their big drops as much as possible. Now we have a chance to just wipe them out with the Technolord. Since that is mostly used for removal more so than its actual main big effect. It's just a very cheap removal card. So they decided to go wide. Not that is an issue to me. Trish, Devilish Idol, free evos, works very well. Anytime you can get a free evo is a massive advantage in this deck. Especially if you have the, of course, cards in hand to take full advantage of it. So I want to wipe out pretty much as much as I can. Really limit their options. It's a very back and forward match when it's mid versus mid. Garnet Rebel, it's actually a card I very rarely get to use in this deck, unfortunately. And another Armored Bat. Definitely playing the long game. So I'm in for the Mechawing Angel, mainly just because it's a really good ward and would allow me to go face for 9 damage without too much of a risk. Even the Medusian isn't that bad, it's only really going to effectively take out 2 cards. And we've got our own to take out a lot of low drops. So we can very easily take out most of this board and probably just leave up the little devil. The Armored Bat there, he'll just kind of stay there. And we'll have a 1-2 Bane still left over, so very, very respectable line of play to hold off the opponent. There's really not a lot they can do to kill us from this point. All they can really do is try and take board control back for now. And Warring Flame is another really good card, especially in Evo heavy decks like this new BloodCraft. So we did end up getting the Destructive Succubus. I could have went for it and left them on 1 health, and that probably would have been the right move, to be honest. But I did decide to take the more board focused option. Developing the board, cheapening the Succubus, and trying to set up for next turn, because if they have the potential to play another Medusa, I could be in trouble. So that's why saving Destructive was the plan. Plus it was going to have to be a 2-turn lethal pretty much no matter what I did, as a minimum requirement. So now I don't really have too much of a choice. Destructive Succubus is probably the only really good way to handle this, but it, of course, on its own isn't the only way. And having the draw did give me options at least to try. So I did decide to go full board and just hope for the best. And leaving the Alpha Drive stuff was definitely a risk. I'm kind of glad they played the Alpha Drive first though, and then went for the 4-3 play and not the other way around. Since now we can wipe this all and set up for lethal next turn with Destructive Succubus again. I'm definitely glad I held off playing those Succubuses at least a little bit, since they aren't wiping this out. They're definitely hoping that I can't win. But of course, with lethal in hand, we are taking this game. Now for the next match, we are up against another BloodCraft deck. No surprise, to be honest. I have noticed these blood decks rising in popularity, and it is one of the more interesting matchups. Because overall I found this deck again was very mediocre, very similar to the Forest deck where it could be hit or miss. I think with more refinement and more time messing around with it, I could definitely get used to this kind of playstyle and win a lot more matches. It's just learning the kind of nuances of this deck in particular. And now we're going 1 for 1. My best bet is of course Unleash Nightmare, since it's basically a guaranteed line of play for this deck. Unless you draw of course the amulets or spells, you are going to get something out of it. Preferably you want the non-back cards in this deck. And Alexandrite Demon with a Robo Golem is definitely good. I'm not even worried about leaving this Armored Bat up now. It's mainly just going to be us focusing on damage, even if it was a risk, since they can go for a pretty good trade here. Moving 2 followers without losing any is definitely good for them. But we're definitely not going down without a fight. Evil-Eyed Serpent, Medusa, going to do a wonderful job of at least limiting their options. And we can remove the 3-2. Now my opponents, yeah, good way to deal with the Bane, but really not a lot else. Their own Medusa though is definitely a good one to go with, especially when we can't get our destruction on yet. Unfortunately their Bane and their Ward were thrown onto the same Serpent. And Trish is going to allow us to drop destruction even just a little bit further, making it playable next turn. I decided to go for the trade that would benefit me the best, leaving both our followers on the board. My opponent not really going for a lot right now. Nightmare's good, being of course 2 bodies and a draw. Now they're just slowly flooding. Fortunately, these aren't really worth using the destruction on here. So I was definitely just better off making whatever play I could to deal with this board without losing anything. And that one is definitely a rough one. This is the kind of board that I want to use the destruction on, removing it as effectively as possible. And potentially even being able to play something else. Since we did end up with another destructive succubus, we don't really need to hold back, since that will be usable just one more turn. Medusian, only really going to counter both these cards. So 2 for 1 is good, but 3 for 1 is always better. And now we have a pretty much free turn to lose a little bit of tempo. Playing the amulet. And using it to our advantage to heal up, even though it's basically worthless for that. I was mainly just looking to regain the Evo point and protect ourselves for the turn. Just in case. I'm kind of glad I did. But now I am forced to, of course, deal with a 5-5, which is not the easiest thing in the world to do. But we can get 4 damage to our opponent while dealing with both of these reasonably easily. I'm also keeping a pretty stable board of followers. Kiss of Lust definitely hurt though. At least our Medusian could deal with this if we need it. And we're actually free to play either Vera or Robo Goblin. And of course Robo Goblin is the better play since it actually has an effect being a 2-2, and Vera can combo with other things later. And not really a lot coming out from our opponent. Wiping the board with our own Succubus is going to do a wonderful job, and picking up the kill and leaving our Medusian up is definitely what I want, since we can go for 3 damage with that over the Goblins 2. Ooh, Tech Lord, that's going to hurt, definitely. We did get the better outcome from it though, since it doesn't look like they can deal with the 6-1, which does lead to them conceding the game right there. Definitely a long one though. So to wrap up this video, this deck was reasonably okay. It definitely wasn't a top tier in my opinion yet, but I definitely think it's got the potential to get there as a very, very solid mid-range option. And I would love to start testing some of these cards in Unlimited as well, although I do feel like Aggro Blade is still going to be the most dominant BloodCraft variant in Unlimited. But overall, definitely a lot of fun, definitely great to use a lot of these new cards, as they are very solid options overall. And hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find the decklist in the description below. Until next time, see ya.